But will they do more winning this year? Of course, last year they were 5-12. We are going to play the schedule game. Everybody plays it.
The Cleveland Browns finally know their full 2026 schedule. And now the real conversation begins. Not the offseason hype, not the draft grades. The real question is simple. How many games are the Browns actually going to win? Because once you go through this thing week by week, you realize this season could go in completely opposite directions. There is a path where Cleveland surprises the entire league, but there is also a path where everything falls apart by mid-October and Browns fans are already arguing about quarterbacks and draft position for next year. Nobody truly knows what this team is yet. Some people look at the defense, the coaching changes, and the talent level and say 8, 9, maybe 10 wins if things break right. Others look at the quarterback uncertainty, the rebuilt offensive line, and the history of this franchise and say they simply do not trust Cleveland until they see it on the field. Both sides have a point. The excuses are gone, the schedule is set, and the Browns are about to find out very quickly what kind of football team they actually are.
It definitely would be a draw there. All right, Tony, the last 4 weeks of the season, we're looking at Giants, at Ravens, Colts at home, Bengals on the road. So obviously ending 3 out of 4 on the road here, which makes sense. They have 5 straight weeks at home. What are your thoughts on this stretch right here? Obviously, you got the 2 division games and then Giants and Colts, which, again, we don't even know. Who knows what those teams are going to be like at that point.
When the schedule first leaked, the immediate reaction from Browns fans was excitement because the slate honestly looked manageable compared to what some other teams around the league are dealing with. Cleveland avoids the West Coast entirely this year. They avoid the nightmare travel situations that wear teams down physically over a long season. They're expected to have mostly 1 o'clock kickoff games. They don't have an international game disrupting their schedule. The Browns are near the bottom of the league in total travel miles, and whether people want to admit it or not, that stuff absolutely matters over a 17-game season. Recovery time matters. Routine matters. Less travel fatigue matters. There's a reason teams hate those brutal coast-to-coast road stretches every year. But even with all those positives, Browns fans know better than almost anybody that schedules on paper don't win football games. Cleveland fans have heard favorable schedule conversations before. They've heard analysts say the Browns should win 9 games before. They've seen preseason optimism turn into chaos countless times. That's why this fan base feels so cautious even when there are legitimate reasons to feel better about this roster than last season's version.
The Browns will dominate in Cleveland against Kevin Stefanski. He won't be able to handle the pressure. He won't be able to handle the fans, the moment, how terrible of a play caller he is. When Shador dimes up this Falcons defense and Kevin Stefanski loses head-to-head to Sanders, oh, the storylines in Browns Twitter will be fantastic. Cleveland improves to 7-6 at home, no doubt in my mind.
The season opener against Jacksonville is already one of those games that perfectly sums up how unpredictable this Browns season feels. Some people instantly look at that matchup and see Trevor Lawrence at home in Florida Heat against a Browns team still trying to figure itself out offensively. Those fans automatically mark it down as a loss. But then there are other people who look at Week 1 NFL football historically and remember that weird things happen constantly in opening games. Teams come out sloppy, favorites lose, quarterbacks struggle. Nobody really knows what teams are yet in September. So there's also a realistic argument that Cleveland could absolutely steal that game if Jacksonville starts slowly or if the Browns' defense dominates early. That's honestly the story of this entire schedule. Very few games feel completely unwinnable for Cleveland, but at the same time, there are also not many games that feel like guaranteed victories either. Everything sits in that middle area where outcomes could swing either way depending on quarterback play, injuries, offensive line chemistry, and whether the Browns finally stop beating themselves in key moments.
Okay.
So not much has changed.
No, that's true.
All right, so Chris has a win. You two got losses in Week 1. What about at Tampa Bay?
Week 2, the Baker Mayfield matchup.
I'm going to say loss at Tampa because a motivated Baker is usually a pretty good Baker. Though I am curious what this Tampa team is going to be now that they don't have Mike Evans, because when Mike Evans got hurt last year, all of a sudden, down the stretch, their offense really struggled. But between these first two weeks, I think the Browns get a win.
The Week 2 matchup against Tampa Bay immediately jumps off the page because everybody knows the storyline there. Baker Mayfield against Cleveland again. And whether Browns fans want to admit it or not, Baker absolutely still plays with a chip on his shoulder when it comes to this franchise. He's always been emotional. He's always been fueled by criticism. He's always been the type of quarterback that thrives when games feel personal. Even years later, there's still this lingering feeling around the league that Baker wants to prove Cleveland made a mistake moving on from him for Deshaun Watson. Browns fans themselves have admitted that situation became a disaster, which only adds even more emotional weight to that matchup.
Yeah, on paper, you could get fat on this whole season in that 5-game stretch. There's no doubt about it. We'll see. We'll see what happens when those teams roll into town.
The scary thing for Cleveland is that Baker Mayfield usually plays his best football early in seasons. September Baker is confident, aggressive, and dangerous. That game feels like an emotional swing that could completely shape the mood around Cleveland's season from the very beginning. Because if the Browns start 0-2, the pressure gets uncomfortable fast. Suddenly, Week 3 against Carolina stops feeling like a normal game and starts feeling like a must-win already. That is how quickly momentum shifts around this franchise. Then comes Thursday night against Pittsburgh in Week 4. Primetime, divisional rival, and for the first time in a long time, the Steelers actually look vulnerable. Mike Tomlin not being there changes the entire emotional dynamic of that rivalry. If Cleveland wants to prove they are a different team, that is the game they absolutely must win at home.
Todd Monken's first game in Cleveland. Yeah, it's a home game. Carolina's not great. I'll take the Browns.
All right. So far, we're in lockstep here. I'm also taking the Browns. It'll be the home opener. The Browns in the last 3 years have been much better at home, especially on defense.
Yep.
Here's the part nobody is talking about. Most people agree the defense keeps Cleveland competitive in a lot of games. Myles Garrett alone raises the floor of this entire football team. The concern is not the defense. The concern is whether the offense can become functional enough to actually support it. If the offense becomes even average, Cleveland probably wins 8 or 9 games. If it struggles again, 6 wins becomes realistic, no matter how manageable the schedule looks. The stretch after the bye is where Cleveland fans start seeing real opportunity. Raiders at home, Bengals at home, Falcons at home. Those are winnable games if the offense finds any rhythm by midseason. But late-season pressure situations have rarely gone smoothly for this franchise. Once Cleveland gets mathematically connected to playoff conversations, every game feels enormous, and that environment has swallowed previous Browns teams whole. So now that the schedule is officially here, the real answer to how many games Cleveland wins comes down to one thing above everything else. Can this franchise finally stop getting in its own way when expectations start rising? Because if they can, there is enough talent and enough winnable games here to surprise people. But if they cannot, Browns fans already know exactly how fast optimism disappears once the losses start stacking up again.